Tonight, Australia sends a surveillance aircraft and missiles to help Gulf countries defend against Iranian attacks. While oil takes a dip, but Australia's already feeling the pinch at the pump. Good evening and welcome to ABC News Victoria. I'm Alexandra Alvaro. Also tonight, he's out. David Littleproud quits as Nationals leader. The driver who killed 5 people in Daylesford in 2023 says sorry. And Blues in a blue. The Carlton coach calls for unity after a former captain's criticism is leaked. Australia has been drawn into the war in the Middle East, deploying 85 ADF personnel to the region tonight to defend against Iranian strikes in the Gulf. The regime, led by its new hardline cleric as supreme leader, has been pounding its neighbours with drone strikes. Australia is now sending help, deploying a long-range reconnaissance aircraft to the UAE to help bolster Gulf countries' defences. As the widening war intensifies, the oil supply shock has hit our shores. The federal government is urging against panic buying of petrol, saying the country has 36 days of fuel in reserve. There's also been a daring escape from the Iranian soccer team, with 5 players granted asylum in Australia at the 11th hour. We'll get the latest from the Middle East and the concerns over oil shortly, but we start our coverage of the war with Defence correspondent Tom Lowry.
Fighter jets hunt drones over the beaches of Dubai.
Whoa.
And Bahrainians piece together the aftermath of a deadly strike, as Iran's attacks take a growing toll on its neighbours in the Persian Gulf. It's a conflict that is now drawing Australia in.
This growing wave of dangerous and destabilising attacks from Iran puts civilian lives at risk, of course including Australian lives.
In response to a request for help from the UAE, Australia will send an E-7A Wedgetail surveillance plane and 85 personnel with it, capable of spotting drones and missiles over an area larger than Western Australia, and recently put to use over the skies of Ukraine.
The Wedgetail and supporting Australian Defence Force personnel will be deployed for an initial 4 weeks in support of the collective self-defence of Gulf nations.
We must stand together against a regime like this.
Australia will also send over missiles to help with the increasingly costly task of taking down Iran's cheap, long-range and deadly drones.
Potentially, if this goes on further, Australia should look at what more we could provide in a defensive capacity. We do have a range of capacities, including our fighter aircraft.
Others argue sending weapons to the Gulf will only drag Australia further into the conflict, as the government maintains it will not take offensive action against Iran.
Every military asset we send into the region is designed to free up another US military asset to be used to kill people in Iran.
The government insists that 2 principles remain firm. Australia will only take defensive action in this conflict and no boots will be put on the ground in Iran. But if this war continues to escalate, the question becomes whether Australia's involvement escalates with it. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
And those Australian personnel and the Wedgetail aircraft will be landing in the UAE overnight. Let's bring in our Global Affairs editor, Laura Tingle, who's in Dubai. Laura, when will they be operational?
Alex, they're expected to be operational by the end of this week. As you mentioned, they're expected to fly into the UAE, where Australia has its biggest sovereign airbase anywhere in the world outside Australia, and it will be the Wedgetail and its crew will be flying defensive missions in aid of trying to deal with the bombardment of missiles and drones that have been coming into the UAE, along with other neighbouring countries since the war began. In fact, there have been more strikes here than there have been in Israel. It's an interesting step up in the relationship between Australia and the UAE. We signed a new strategic partnership with UAE last year, and this is a sort of a significant change in the relationship for which the UAE is very grateful. So it'll be interesting to see how much this drags Australia into the war. While we are saying it's a defensive arrangement, it's not clear whether the Iranian Revolutionary Guard will necessarily see it that way.
Okay, Laura Tingle in Dubai, thank you. 5 members of the Iranian women's soccer team have been granted humanitarian visas by the Australian government amid grave concerns for their safety. The extraordinary diplomatic operation unfolded over the past 48 hours. And tonight, there's a chance more of their teammates could seek asylum. Here's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman.
A sports team at the centre of a diplomatic firestorm. Iran's Lionesses leave their Gold Coast hotel as supporters desperately try and block their path. 5 of their teammates had staged a daring escape, granted refuge in the dark before dawn.
There were lots of photos, lots of celebrating, and then a spontaneous outbreak of Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi.
The secret operation unfolded on Sunday. Tony Burke flying to the Gold Coast where the team was playing their final Asian Cup match. Immigration officials at the game conveying a message that help was on offer. On Monday, conversations started in earnest with 5 of the athletes, and that night they escaped, the AFP moving the women to a safe location. The minister returned, and in the early hours of this morning, their visas had been issued.
They're safe here and they should feel at home here.
I understand that it was probably the hardest decision they all had to make.
The women gained global attention last week when they refused to sing their national anthem before their opening match against South Korea. A silent protest labelled an act of wartime treachery on Iranian state TV. As the diplomatic operation unfolded behind the scenes, Donald Trump threw a giant spotlight on it, demanding on social media that Anthony Albanese grant the women asylum. A 2 a.m. phone call to the Prime Minister confirmed Australia already had, prompting the President to post again. He's on it.
I was able to convey to him the action that we'd undertaken.
The fate of their teammates hangs in the balance. One player seen here being led onto the bus to the airport. Concerns officers from Iran's hardline Revolutionary Guard are travelling with them.
We say to them, if you want our help, help is here.
Every reasonable Australian would want a good outcome for their safety and for their future.
Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
The price of oil has started to dip after the US president threatened Iran with fire and fury over the global supply shock. But fears of shortages have seen petrol pumps start to run dry across parts of Australia as experts warn of the nation's vulnerabilities.
A servo with no petrol running dry in Texas, Queensland.
It's quite stressful. We're not able to give them fuel and they need fuel.
And no joy here in Whyalla in regional Australia either.
Tanks went dry.
Pumps in Victoria's second biggest city are starting to run dry too.
We've got half a tank just in case.
Actually, I am panicked, so I think some people are going to be panicked too.
Trawlers in Queensland docked without diesel.
The 3 major fuel wharves have no fuel for us and they don't know when they can get it.
The global oil supply shock from the widening war has drivers and industries on edge.
The big message for every Australian is don't panic. The suppliers are there.
But supply is clearly being drained, especially in parts of regional Australia.
We've had up to a month's supply go out, leave the system in a matter of a few days.
Experts predict that Australia has 25 days left in reserve.
If we don't get diesel, it'll disable civil society.
The price of diesel has jumped again to $2.30, while unleaded petrol is up to $2.24 in Darwin, with Perth the cheapest at $1.93. After rocketing past $100 a barrel, oil prices have started to drop back down. US President Donald Trump warning Iran that if it doesn't allow oil to flow, it'll hit Tehran 20 times harder.
If Iran does anything to do that, they'll get hit at a much, much harder level. They'll never be able to recover.
There's still oil. It's a supply chain issue, and that directly affects Australia.
We're not just dependent on the Middle East for petrol. Our farmers rely on fertiliser that comes out of the region. Without it, winter crops sown next month could be in jeopardy.
The reality is, in regional communities, they've run out of fuel in these towns. Now, if that happened in a city suburb, they'd be hell to pay.
All of this will push up inflation, from food to petrol pumps, raising the risk of higher interest rates as well. Amelia Turzon, ABC News.
In Victoria, petrol stations will now have to lock in their fuel prices every 24 hours, which the state says will save motorists money. Under laws that came into effect today, every service station must set its fuel price by 2 p.m. each day for the next day's price. That cost cap is in place from 6 a.m, with stations able to lower the price for 24 hours but not increase it. Every petrol station bowser price is also published online, with Premier Jacinta Allen warning businesses that don't comply face thousands of dollars in fines. Donald Trump is sending mixed messages on how long the war could last. The US president initially said the conflict was pretty much complete, before arguing there was more to achieve.
A lot of friends, sit down, we have a little time.
Signalling that the war could soon be over.
We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion.
While at the same time threatening to escalate the conflict.
We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further.
Donald Trump says he's disappointed with the elevation of Mojtaba Khamenei as Iran's new supreme leader, but won't say whether he'll be targeted like his father was. The son of the assassinated Ayatollah celebrated on the streets of Iran. Death to America, this crowd is chanting. One Iranian sent the ABC a voice note arguing the US and Israeli strikes have sparked a backlash in his country.
Even people who had difficulties with the government, they don't want their children to go to school and not come back. They don't want their hospitals to be bombed.
But another resident insisted the regime still faces fierce opposition.
My friends and I are waiting for any new selected leader to be eliminated by Israel and Trump. We are ultimately waiting for the Islamic Republic to be toppled soon.
Iran continues to fire back at Israel using cluster munitions that break apart in the air. At least one person was killed at this construction site near Tel Aviv's airport.
And this is one of the new threats from these Iranian missiles. You can see down here the shrapnel which has ripped through the metal casing of this escalator. It is that shrapnel coming from cluster munitions which is posing one of the gravest threats to the public.
Do you see any military facilities around you? The Iranians are targeting civilians.
But Israel and the US are also facing allegations of striking civilians, with video appearing to show it was an American Tomahawk missile that hit a girls' school in Iran, killing more than 160 people. The US is investigating.
Whatever the report shows, I'm willing to live with that report.
Standing by his decisions as Commander-in-Chief. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Jerusalem.
And there will be more on the war in the Middle East tonight on 7:30. In a shock announcement, David Littleproud has revealed he's resigning as the leader of the Nationals, but will stay on in Parliament as the member for Maranoa. Here's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman.
David Littleproud surprised his own colleagues, announcing that after 4 years in the job, he's stepping down as Nationals leader. Quite simply, he says he's run out of energy, but it's clear last year's devastating election defeat has taken its toll.
I'm buggered. I've had enough. To lead this great party would be the wrong thing for me to do.
It's been a tumultuous time on the Conservative side of politics. David Littleproud engineered 2 coalition splits and had a public falling out with former Liberal leader Susan Lee. So far, Senator Matt Canavan has confirmed he'll contest the leadership. Others are considering their options. Whoever gets the job will need to contend with the rise of One Nation and will face their first test with the upcoming Farrer by-election.
The Premier Jacinta Allen has met with the family of slain Good Samaritan Aidan Becker. This afternoon, Ms Allen visited Mernda train station where Mr Becker was killed to pay her respects and lay flowers. She also met with members of the government's newly deployed Violence Reduction Unit. The 22-year-old died while protecting a 14-year-old boy from a group of teenagers last Friday.
It's an opportunity for me to sit and listen and also express my deepest sympathy for someone who is a strong young man, proud member of the local community, who has been killed in the most awful, violent and tragic of circumstances.
Members of the Muslim community in Ballarat say they've been left shaken by a racist attack at an iftar dinner to celebrate the end of Ramadan on Sunday. They say a man shouted racist slurs and threw punches before being overpowered.
A 37-year-old man, aggravated and shirtless, is held down by guests at an iftar dinner in Ballarat. Police are called and the man is placed in handcuffs, but not before traumatising the men, women and children who were celebrating the end of Ramadan.
I don't even have words to explain how scared we all were.
Usman Abdul Qaeda had organised the dinner and was mingling with guests when he was interrupted.
Suddenly I heard commotion outside, stepped out, and I saw my brother in a fist fight.
He alleges the man was yelling racist threats.
Dead to Allah, I'll send you guys to Allah, I'll kill you all. And that really scared me.
The incident has frightened the community and his family.
It was an event that we can never forget from our minds, and especially the kids, they were very scared.
But it was what happened after police attended that has upset those who were at the dinner. After being spoken to by police, the man was given a move-on order and released. Police say the investigation remains ongoing, but no charges have been laid.
We are now, talking about increasing security at the mosque.
The local Multicultural Council says the alleged attack comes at a time when the immigration debate has heightened racial tension and has called on politicians to do better.
I think some of the speech that is coming out of the politicians' mouths at the moment isn't helping.
Something like this happening in Australia is just beyond me.
A frightening end to a day of celebration. Charlotte Wilkes, ABC News, Ballarat.
A diabetic man who ploughed into diners outside a regional Victorian pub, killing 5 people, has apologised to their families. Today at the Victorian Coroner's Court, William Swale gave evidence into the tragic events that unfolded in Daylesford in 2023.
A car stopping in the middle of a road, pausing for some time before doing a U-turn and heading in the direction of a group of unsuspecting diners. Diabetic William Swale told the Victorian Coroner's Court today he had no memory of the moments leading up to the fatal crash. The 69-year-old gave evidence for the first time since the tragedy that left 5 people dead in November 2023. What should have been a beautiful way to spend Cup Weekend in Daylesford turned to horror for the families of Pratibha Sharma, her partner Jatin Kumar and her daughter Anvi, as well as their friend Vivek Bhatia and his son Vihan. 6 others were injured. Criminal charges against Mr Swale were dismissed in 2024 after a judge ruled his actions were involuntary. The type 1 diabetic told the coronial inquest he was initially aware of needing to manage his blood glucose levels and stopped at a Daylesford wine bar, but left without eating because it was booked out. The inquest also heard he'd not been looking at his phone, which was programmed to alert him about dangerously low levels of blood glucose. Mr Swale told the court with great emotion that of course he's sorry and that he thinks of the victims who lost their lives, especially the children, from the moment he wakes to the moment he sleeps. This is a catastrophe that should not have happened and I'm devastated to have been part of it, he said. The court heard Mr Swale had carefully managed his diabetes since the mid-90s and his last severe hypoglycemic episode had been 20 years before the crash. Mr Swale said he no longer drives a car. The victims' family members did not attend the hearing. Andy Yu, ABC News, Melbourne.
A Perth court has heard allegations former Australian rules footballer Barry Cable sexually abused a young girl in the late 1960s. The woman, now in her 60s, claims to have been around 10 years old at the time of the alleged offending. Barry Cable denies the allegations.
Barry Cable was a decorated Australian rules footballer in the 60s and 70s.
Across to Cable, a straight shot's needed.
It's during this time the now 82-year-old is accused of sexually abusing a young girl. In her opening statement, Crown Prosecutor Kim Jennings told the Perth District Court Mr Cable was very well known and well liked, but that behind that spotlight there was a dark side. The alleged victim, who lived in an orphanage as a child, told the court she stayed with Mr Cable and his wife for a few weeks during the late 1960s, alleging the sexual abuse happened on several occasions. But Mr Cable's lawyer, Tom Percy, told the court the allegations were false, saying there were no records showing this woman had been absent from the orphanage for a period of weeks. He suggested there was a financial motive for her allegations because they emerged in 2023, around the time a judge found he had sexually abused a different girl in a civil trial, telling the woman she wanted to cash in too, to which she replied, "No, I did not." Asked why she hadn't told anyone about the alleged abuse at the time, the woman told the court, "Because he told me no one would believe me because he was Barry Cable." The judge-alone trial also heard evidence from the woman who won the civil case against Barry Cable. She described multiple instances of sexual assault against her. The trial is also set to hear from 2 more women. The prosecution arguing this shows a tendency for Barry Cable to be sexually attracted to young underage girls and to act upon that sexual interest. Rhiannon Shine, ABC News, Perth.
And if you or someone you know needs help, please contact 1800-RESPECT by phone or their website. The city of Bundaberg in Queensland is in the grip of an emergency tonight. Close to 300 homes are at risk of inundation when a major river peaks overnight.
Residents ordered to evacuate as the Burnett River swallows streets, homes and businesses.
They have been warned that they need to leave immediately.
Boats and pontoons pulled from their moorings, cars submerged as locals make last-minute preparations, with the north set to be cut off for several days.
When the 2010 flood hit, this house actually went under.
We've been through it a few times, and if there's anything under the house, you're sort of prepared to lose that.
We can drive, just get a car and drive, but where are we going to put the chook?
As the community waits out the overnight peak, there's some relief. The water won't reach the height of the 2010 floods, but authorities say there'll still be heartbreaking consequences if the water reaches 7.5 metres, as businesses on the south side brace for impact. Fridges and freezers emptied, trying to save perishable goods.
We've just cleared out everything out of every single shed, shop, freezer.
The peak in both Gayndah and Mundubbera was just below impacting homes, which was really, a blessing for that community. That won't be the case here in Bundaberg.
Upstream, the region's troubled Paradise Dam, which had its capacity lowered and walls reinforced to make it safe, faces its first test. It's currently at double its capacity.
There's no issues with the structure of the dam. It is, from all the information we've got, it is safe at the moment.
The threat has passed for Gayndah and Mundubbera, with locals grateful it wasn't worse. Lucy Loram, ABC News, Bundaberg.
To finance now, and the local share price bounced back today as the oil price fell back sharply. Here's Alan Kohler.
The oil price had already fallen below $100 a barrel when President Trump rang a reporter from CBS News. She immediately posted her scoop on X at 6:15 this morning, our time, saying he had told her the war is very complete, pretty much, and he's thinking about taking over the Straits of Hormuz, whatever that might mean. The oil price promptly dropped to 85. The news conference a couple of hours later didn't take things much further, even though he foreshadowed the removal of sanctions to get oil flowing. But in general, markets are feeling much better about things today than they were yesterday. But it really is a day-by-day proposition. The oil price is still about $25 above where it was before the United States and Israel started bombing Iran and the Persian Gulf slammed shut, while gold and silver went up today. The share market had a bit of a bounce, with investors buying miners and banks and selling oil and gas stocks. The US market rose last night, as did Japanese and Korean stocks today. And the Aussie dollar moved a bit higher against the US dollar but stayed steady against the euro. Now, the government might be wishing Australia taxed its LNG exports as much as the royalties on iron ore, and better still, coal. Liquid natural gas prices are soaring, but we only get 2% of that on top of the company tax, compared with 7% for iron ore and 13% for coal. And finally, the Roy Morgan ANZ Consumer Sentiment Survey today showed that, unsurprisingly, inflation expectations have surged. This is what the Reserve Bank is worried about. And if interest rates go up next Tuesday, or more likely in May, this will be why. and that's finance.
Carlton coach Michael Voss has called for unity, saying the Blues are culturally defeating themselves following a private spray from a former captain that's gone public. Sam Docherty gave a frank assessment of the team following the opening round loss to the Swans.
He's Carlton's cult hero, a former captain and a fierce defender. Only this week, Sam Docherty became the unwitting antagonist.
I don't spend a hell of a lot of time focusing or sharing what others say about us. What I do is reinforce the behaviours we need.
Following the Blues' opening round thumping, the 184-game defender shared his thoughts privately with his friend, former player Dan Gorringe, who aired them on a podcast.
Then they start losing contests, they get under pressure, they can't get a hold of the ball, and they're just an absolute show. So basically you smack our mids again this year and we'll be
Culturally, we defeat ourselves. I just felt that was an example of that.
Michael Voss spent last year defending the club's culture, and in a new season, he had to do it again.
We're not going to get mixed between the old and the new. We're new, and that's the way we're going forward.
Hey, it was me. Hand up. Exile me. Don't let me near anything.
Carlton is now in the spotlight to respond, and they'll get a chance to do so here at the MCG on Thursday night. But as a result of the comments, the club has taken a public stand, uninviting the former captain to a function here on Thursday night. The Lions have lost their first fight, with the tribunal upholding Darcy Gardner's one-match suspension for a strike on Aaron Norton.
Oh, is that 50? Was it late?
Making matters worse, they'll also miss Hugh McCluggage and Zach Bailey for Saturday's match against the red-hot Sydney Swans. Alexia Pesce, ABC News, Melbourne.
Six-time gold medalist Michael Milton has made an emotional return to the Winter Paralympics in Italy after an absence of 2 decades. The 52-year-old competed in the Super G standing event less than a month after surgery on a fractured leg. Australia's most decorated Winter Paralympian was disappointed to finish 23rd in his comeback race. To the weather now, and overnight conditions were settled. It was coolest in Dartmoor and Portland, 7 degrees, and warmest in Melbourne, 18. It was a warmer than average day today, dry and mostly sunny after a cloudy morning in the south. The top was 34 in Swan Hill. In Melbourne, it reached 30 degrees at around 2 o'clock. It's 29 in the city right now. Around the country, mostly clear in Sydney and Brisbane, sunny in Adelaide, wet in Darwin and mostly sunny in Perth and Hobart. The satellite picture is showing cloud over the top end, a thick band of cloud over the southwest of WA and patchy cloud over New South Wales and Queensland. There's a high-pressure system over the Tasman Sea directing a northeasterly airstream across our coastal waters as a low-pressure trough crosses the Bight. Tomorrow, showers for eastern Queensland, New South Wales as well as southern WA. A monsoon is driving showers and storms across the tropics, and a cold front will bring showers to the southeast of the country. For the capital cities, sunny in Sydney and Perth, partly cloudy in Adelaide, mostly sunny in Brisbane, rain in Hobart and a shower or two for Darwin. Back home, cloud will increase during the day with isolated showers developing from the west over southern and mountain districts, remaining mostly dry in the north. Ballarat, Horsham and Colac, 26, 31 in Bendigo. Patchy morning fog in the east and then a warm to hot day with moderate to locally fresh northwesterly winds which will tend cooler in the afternoon and evening. 33 in Seymour, Lake Eildon and Bairnsdale, reaching up to 35 in the north. On the bay, 15 to 25 knot northerly winds will shift westerly in the afternoon, getting up to 30 knots by the evening, waves to 1.5 metres. Extreme fire danger is forecast for the north central and northeast, and there will be a total fire ban for those areas too. And there's a severe weather warning for damaging winds in parts of East Gippsland, northeast, west and south Gippsland, central and southwest forecast districts. For Melbourne, a shower or two developing with a top of 29 degrees, down to 19 tonight. And looking ahead, Thursday, a shower or two, 19. Friday, cloudy, 20 degrees. Saturday, cloud clearing, 25 degrees. Sunday, partly cloudy, 25. Monday, a possible shower, 22. And next Tuesday, partly cloudy and 23 degrees. And that is it for this evening's bulletin. Stay with us now for 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson.